maintenant la séance. Bonjour tout le monde.
I am now opening the session. Welcome to meeting 56 of the Public Accounts Committee. According to Article 1083, the committee is reuniting today to talk about the cybersecurity of private personal information in the cloud.
Welcome our witnesses. In the Office of the Auditor General, Andrew Hayes, Deputy Auditor General, good to see you. Jean Goulet, Principal. Gabriel Lombardi, Principal. Thank you all for joining us. From the Communications Security Establishment, Rajiv Gupta, Associate Head, Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. Good day. Department of Public Works and Government Services, Paul Thompson, Deputy Minister by video conference. Catherine Poulin, Assistant Deputy Minister, Departmental Oversight Branch. From Shared Services Canada, Sonny Perron, President, and Kostas Theophilos, Director General, Cloud Product Management and Services. And from the Treasury Board Secretariat, Catherine Lulilo, Deputy Minister, Chief Information Officer of Canada. There'll be several opening statements. Mr. Hayes, you have the floor for the first 5. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We appreciate this opportunity to discuss our report on cybersecurity of personal information in the cloud, which was tabled in the House of Commons on November 15th, 2022. I would like to acknowledge that this hearing is taking place on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Joining me are Jean Goulet and Gabriel Lombardi, who led this audit. Federal departments are increasingly moving software applications and databases into the cloud, including some that handle or store Canadians' personal information. Information stored digitally, whether on premises, in data centers, or in the cloud, is exposed to the risk of being compromised. In this audit, we wanted to know whether the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat, Shared Services Canada, Public Services and Procurement Canada, Communications Security Establishment Canada, and selected departments had controls in place to prevent, detect, and respond to security threats on Canadians' personal information in the cloud. Overall, we found that the departments we audited did not always implement and follow the controls that the government has set out to protect information that is stored or transmitted using the cloud. These controls include, for example, encryption and network security requirements. We also found that security requirements and the corresponding roles and responsibilities were not always clear, and as a result, they were not consistently implemented. This leaves cloud-based information vulnerable to cyber attacks, which are increasingly frequent and sophisticated. Nous avons aussi constaté que 4 ans après avoir demandé aux ministères fédéraux d'envisager la transition vers l'info nuagique,
We also, there was no long-term plan for its adoption. They also had not given the minister the tools to calculate the costs of the transition and for the operation of cloud information. Without such a financing plan and tools to establish the costs, it is difficult for the department to know if they have the resources and the expertise that they require to make sure that the information is secure in the cloud. And they also can't intervene in case of a threat. This plan and these tools would strengthen the government's capacity to intervene if necessary. We have also noticed that PSPC and Shared Services Canada had not required that service suppliers give a report of their environmental information or how this service contributed to diminishing greenhouse gas emissions in Canada. This is an important observation because Canada gave itself the goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2050. And Canada has also committed to including criteria to diminish greenhouse gas emissions within PSBC. To date, this has not been happened with regards to procurement with cloud information. The government must take immediate steps while the department is in the baby steps to getting cloud information, getting involved with cloud information. We must ensure that the information is securized in order to prevent and predict cyber attacks and act consequently. It is also important to define responsibilities and clear roles with regards to cybersecurity so that concerned departments and service suppliers know exactly what they should do. Mr. Chair, I have reached the end of my opening remarks, and we will be happy to answer questions from MPs. Thank you very much, Mr. Hayes.
The establishment, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Hello, bonjour. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee for the invitation to appear on the study of the Auditor General Canada report to Parliament on cybersecurity of personal information in the cloud. My name is Rajiv Gupta. My pronouns are he, his, and il, lui. I am the Associate Head of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity at the Communication Security Establishment, also known as the Cyber Centre. Le Centre pour la cybersécurité est l'autorité technique en matière de cybersécurité au Canada. Il protège le pays en misant sur des capacités de cybersécurité avancées.
It is the only account
Colleagues from the Treasury Board, Secretariat, Shared Services Canada, and Public Services and Procurement Canada, with whom we work closely on cybersecurity matters. As part of the Cyber Centre's operational role, we share cyber alerts and threat assessments across the Government of Canada to ensure our information systems remain secure, responsive, and well-defended. As part of our education role, we work to increase cybersecurity awareness across the government through initiatives like the Learning Hub. Le Carrefour de l'apprentissage est situé dans le Centre pour la cybersécurité et offre de la formation visant à améliorer la cybersécurité du gouvernement du Canada. It is
the
2022 fiscal year. The Learning Hub renewed its collaboration with the Canada School of Public Service, CSPS, to provide a standardized cybersecurity curriculum for all
Point of
federal
order,
public
Mr. Chair.
servants.
I'm not seeing the translation. I think maybe you're speaking
Just
too
1
fast.
second. So you're not hearing the translation? Oh,
This is interpretation. Is there an issue with the sound? Is there an issue with the sound? This is interpretation into English.
okay. If you could just going to back, I'll give you a little time here, just back up a paragraph and maybe just slow down just a little bit, please. It's probably sometimes if the translation can't keep up, that could be the problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, just in the meantime, are you hearing the translation now?
Interpretation into English.
All right, over to you, sir. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. OK. Le Carrefour de l'apprentissage est situé dans le Centre pour
The Learning Hub is based at the Cyber Centre and provides training to improve the cybersecurity of Canada's government and critical infrastructure organizations.
During the 2021-22 fiscal year, the Learning Hub renewed its collaboration with the Canada School of Public Service to provide a standardized cybersecurity curriculum for all federal public servants. The Learning Hub and CSPS co-developed an e-learning course to introduce public servants from non-technical backgrounds to the basics of cloud computing. This is a priority topic for the public service as departments continue to migrate their IT infrastructure to the cloud. Government of Canada organizations are increasingly leveraging cloud computing, which has the potential to deliver agile, flexible, and cost-effective IT services. As noted in our 2021-22 annual report, CSE continues to function as a pathfinder for the GC in migrating to the cloud. En effet, le CST a
Indeed, CSE was an early adopter of cloud technology, and we ensured that we were the initial adopters of our own internal advice and guidance.
We were the first department to securely implement several commercial cloud applications, securing them with our cloud-based sensors. We demonstrated leadership by sharing the lessons learned and the relevant advice and guidance with other departments. As I mentioned earlier, the Cyber Centre is the operational lead for protecting the GC from cyber threats, such as ransomware and cyber espionage. Nous travaillons avec des partenaires fédéraux pour défendre les
We work with federal partners to defend the government's networks and sensitive information of federal institutions.
While there's no such thing as zero risk when it comes to cyber threats, we are ensuring that the highest levels of protection are in place. The Cyber Center uses autonomous sensors to detect malicious cyber activity on government networks, systems, and cloud infrastructure. We use 3 types of sensors: network-based sensors, cloud-based sensors, and host-based sensors. These sensors allow the Cyber Center to detect cyber threats happening in real time. Our classified knowledge of threat actor behavior allows us to defend against and block these threats. We work with our federal partners to ensure the appropriate safeguards have been applied to ensure security and privacy of their information that is hosted in the cloud. As cloud environments continue to evolve, we are ensuring we continue to evolve our tools to ensure the government systems are well defended and secure. Je tiens à remercier le Bureau de vérificateur.
I would like to thank the Office of the Auditor General of Canada for their report and to the committee for bringing us together to discuss this important topic.
Although none of these recommendations outlined in the report are specific to CSC, we welcome them. CSC and the Cyber Center take information security very seriously, and this includes, of course, the government's data in the cloud. We will continue to collaborate with our federal partners to move forward on these recommendations. So, members of the committee, I can assure you that CSC will continue to work with partners to bolster Canada's cybersecurity, while at the same time ensuring the necessary protections are in place to respect Canadians' privacy. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this important study, and I'm looking forward to answering any additional questions you may have. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Turning now to the Department of Public Works and Government Services. I believe that's you, Mr. Thompson. Over to you for 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to be here with you and members of the committee to discuss how Public Services and Procurement Canada is responding to the audit of cybersecurity and personal information in the cloud. Je suis accompagné aujourd'hui de...
With me today is Catherine Poulin, Assistant Deputy Minister of our Departmental Oversight Branch. Mr. Chair, as the Government of Canada's purchaser of goods and services, my department is committed to ensuring that our procurement processes meet the needs of our client departments and agencies.
The importance of cybersecurity in all facets of the Government of Canada's work, and the government continues to invest in enhancing cybersecurity capabilities. For example, in Budget 2023, there is a proposed $25 million for PSPC to work with National Defence and others to establish a cybersecurity certification program for defence procurements in order to further protect Canada's defence supply chain. Looking beyond Canada's defence supply chain, we know that the use of cloud computing for software applications and databases has the potential to not only improve how we and federal organizations provide services, but also to reduce the cost and maintenance of physical services and applications. As the government continues its strategy of using cloud computing, it is clear that departments involved will need to work more closely together to manage the security risks in the cloud. Sachant que les cybermen...
With cybersecurity threats and attacks continuing to increase in frequency and severity, my department welcomed the audit of the protection of personal information in cloud computing. PSPC plays a supporting role in 2 key areas.
Purchaser for the Government of Canada, PSPC procures cloud services on behalf of departments and agencies and has established a supply arrangement with pre-qualified cloud service providers to help streamline the process. PSPC is also responsible for assessing the physical security controls of cloud service providers and their personnel. In cases where departments procure cloud services directly through our supply arrangement or through other procurements, we are committed to providing advice and guidance to those departments to help ensure cloud guardrails are implemented to prevent cybersecurity breaches. Mr. Chair, while the security of information is an important Government of Canada priority, we at PSPC are also strongly committed to doing our part on another priority, which is promoting environmental responsibility and sustainable development. The Auditor General's report rightly points out that our contracting processes did not meet the required cloud service providers to demonstrate their environmental performance or ask them to explain how their services would reduce Canada's greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, even when providers offered that information, there has been no mechanism in place to confirm it was accurate. The report recommended that PSPC, in conjunction with Shared Services Canada, include environmental criteria when procuring cloud services, and doing so will help contribute to supporting sustainability and help Canada achieve its net zero carbon emission goals. Our two departments agree with that recommendation, and we have committed to taking action by working with our colleagues from Shared Services Canada to address that. This includes requiring suppliers to provide information on their commitments to achieve net zero emissions, developing clauses in cloud computing service contracts to include GHG reduction targets, and revising the standard contracts for the procurement of cloud services and for requests for proposals. Nous employons également.
We are also working on incorporating environmental criteria into our existing cloud procurement vehicles. To conclude, Mr. Chair, I would like to express my thanks to the Auditor General for her report. I believe her recommendations will help guide improvements in our practices around cloud computing services. Through continued collaboration with our partners, Public Services and Procurement Canada, we'll be better positioned to meet our climate change obligations and ensure the security of information of Canadians in the cloud. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Et merci beaucoup, Mr. Thompson. Suivant, c'est Mr. Perron from Shared Services Canada. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee for your invitation. I'm pleased to be here today accompanied by Costa Theophilos, Director General of Cloud Product Management and Services, to address any question the committee may have with respect to the Auditor General of Canada and Shared Service Canada progress in addressing the recommendation. Consistent with its commitment to provide modern and secure IT infrastructure, SSC is continuously modernizing the Government of Canada IT infrastructure. In this effort, SSC has taken an enterprise approach, which means we continue to consolidate, standardize, and modernize networks and systems across government. It is essential that we keep pace with ever-changing technology and increased cyber threat activities. As such, over the past few years, we have significantly adopted digital solution, including leveraging the cloud environment. It is essential that we keep pace with these changes. Cloud adoption is a shared responsibility across the Government of Canada. Shared services provide controls and secure access to cloud environment at the enterprise scale. Precisely, SSC enables cloud adoption by department and agencies by providing access to critical building blocks such as supply, secure cloud-to-ground network connectivity, guidance, and expertise. At that vein, SSC works with departments to migrate their data and application from aging data center to modern infrastructure such as the cloud or enterprise data centers. This accelerates the modernization of application in an agile, secure, and cost-effective way. Protecting the information of Canadians is a top priority for SSC. This is why a common approach across department and agency is important. We are still in an early stage of cloud adoption, and enhancement and maturing the process and protocols are expected. While there is no such thing as zero risk when it comes to cyber threats, we are ensuring that the highest level of protection are in place. It is important to note that all information that is stored in Canada and most sensitive information is stored. It is important to note that all information is stored in Canada and the most sensitive information is stored in the Government of Canada owned data centers. Nous accueillons le rapport et les recommandations de la vérificatrice générale.
This audit allows us to strengthen our work. We are, of course, more and more reliant on the cloud environment. SSC has a role in 4 of the 5 recommendations included in the audit. For Recommendation 1, SSC is working closely with the Treasury Board Secretariat to strengthen guardrail validation and enforcement and to ensure coordination with departments. Cloud guardrails set the minimum security requirements that departments need for the configuration and the operations of their cloud environment. This includes how data is managed and where it is stored. SSC has begun the automation of the Government of Canada guardrails to assess compliancy in real time. This will be tested with pilot departments beginning in fall 2023. On the second recommendation, the Government of Canada set a minimum security requirement for securing cloud-based information. SSC is working with departments to validate any outstanding cloud security controls. On the third recommendation to address the issue of cloud funding model, SSC is working with TBS to review the way forward as it relates to cloud costing and recovery. It is expected that the proposed cost model will be available in April 2023. On the fourth recommendation, SSC and Public Services and Procurement Canada will soon release a standard template for cloud contracts that includes sustainability terms for cloud providers. In fact, SSC has started to include environmental criteria in competitive solicitations under the Cloud Framework Agreement. For example, some processes now include a rated criteria, encouraging suppliers to set targets to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Going forward, SSC will include rated environmental criteria in all new competitive solicitations under the Government of Canada Cloud Framework Agreement. Mr. Chair and committee members, SSC work continuously to manage cloud security risks and to enhance cybersecurity so that Canadians' data and privacy are safeguarded. Thank you. I am pleased to take your questions.
And thank you very, very much. And finally, from the Treasury Board, we have Ms. Luilo. Thank you very much. For 5 minutes, please. You have the floor.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This is my first time appearing at this committee. I've met some of you, but for the others, I'm pleased to be here today. 21 months in government, having spent about 30 years in private sector. And so I'm still in my firsts as I go through all these different exercises. So as Chief Information Officer of Canada, I provide overall leadership for the management of information technology, information management, and service and digital transformation within the Government Canada. And as you see me sitting here with my colleagues today, we could have another 100 people here with all the departments. It's a team sport to modernize digital infrastructure in government, and certainly cybersecurity is as well. Part of how we do this is we have legislation that we manage out of my department, including access to information, open government, and we have oversight for all of the major technology programs, and we have accountability for the GC Cybersecurity Event Management Plan. That's a mouthful, the GCCSEMP for sure. When it comes to the protection of Canadians' personal information, we set out policies, set cybersecurity requirement, and execute decisions on the management of cybersecurity risks on behalf of the government. This is through the policy on government security, the policy on service and digital, and a number of different mechanisms that sit underneath that, such as the digital standards. A couple of key messages in response to the AG's report. We welcome this report, and as noted by the auditor, we're at baby steps. We are at the beginning of the beginning. This is a beautiful time for us to be getting these findings and have an opportunity to improve. In my experience in prior organizations, a strong audit function really helps technology organizations be better, and I look forward to continued work with the Auditor General on this and other files. As I noted, we're at the very beginning of the modernization of our technology environment. Only 35% of the systems in the Government of Canada are in a healthy state, and cloud is a key to modernizing those systems. Cloud migration is one lever, and as of a note, private and public organizations all around the globe are dealing with this. I worked for several large Canadian companies, and some of the things that we've noticed here are things that we ran into in that environment. The Government of Canada takes the protection of this information, of Canadians' information, very seriously, and as Sunny noted, not all services will be in the cloud. That is not our plan. We are going to have cloud and we are going to have enterprise data centers, and that is partially from a financial perspective and partially from a utility perspective. Cloud guardrails, a standard set of controls, are going to evolve over time. The threat landscape changes, the environment technically changes, so we'll be tuned to that. And we will continue to strengthen oversight and compliance mechanisms for cloud use across government to make sure there's very clear guidance and compliance. Since the Auditor General's report, I want to just talk about a couple of areas of progress. We have updated our cloud roles and responsibilities document and a corresponding matrix and published it internally, so our team members have got access to that. On November 2022, we updated the Government of Canada cybersecurity event management plan. And this is the plan that we put in place to respond to enterprise government cybersecurity incidents. This was first published in 2015, and we continue to test and review and tune that plan. That's normal practice with any type of a cybersecurity plan. And in fact, about 4 weeks ago, we just completed an On Guard, which is a simulation that we run across government, and it included a cloud component as part of that review. So we are starting to test our response to cyber incidents in the cloud. In January, we also published an updated cloud strategy that had been in work for several months, and we've changed the language from cloud first to cloud smart, and that really identifies the fact that we are not always just going to go to the cloud. We're going to balance the decision making on a number of factors, including financial. And cloud first was exactly the right strategy for the government to move forward. We needed to start directing people into new technology, so it kind of got the ship moving in the right direction, for lack of a better way of saying it. We have about 800 of our applications in the cloud. That's still a very small percentage of overall systems that we have across government. Of note, in January, I issued guidance out of my office on the classification of personal information in the cloud. And in coordination with many of the people around this table, came to a decision that we are going to designate some high-value assets, so personal information being examples, some systems that would have an additional set of controls put in place to protect them even further. And our Benefits Delivery Modernization Program, which houses a lot of Canadians' data, is a good example of where we'll be deploying on that. Finally, continued development of a cloud costing model. Sunny talked about that already. We're looking to have that ready for publication in summer, fall. We've done a lot of work on that already, and that is going to help departments make informed decisions about moving to the cloud, not just the cost of moving to the cloud, but the cost of operating in the cloud. Both of those things are very helpful to understand, and that will fulfill our responsibilities as it relates to recommendation number 4. So in closing, our ultimate goal is to provide Canadians, Canadian businesses, and all service users with a high quality and an efficient service that they expect in a digital age. Cloud's going to be a part of that. We will be regularly managing our progress on achieving this ambition, and cloud is an important part of that plan. Once again, Mr. Chair, thank you for your invitation to speak to you today, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to say a couple words at the top. This, I think, is one of the most important reports and work that government can do, because we're not just dealing with dollars and cents or policies that members and civil servants deals with all the time, but we're in fact dealing with potentially the identity of Canadians, which is in some cases invaluable. So I appreciate the work you do here today, and I hope the Auditor General's Office will continue to prioritize this review to ensure we always have standards that keep the identity and information of Canadians safe. I'm just going to ask 2 quick questions, just because I think it will clear, just to help other members. Mr. Hayes, I know there is at least one recommendation that is not public. Is there just one, or is there more than one recommendation that you felt important not to make public in this report today?
Thank you. There was just one recommendation.
Thank you. And I was going to general question, but I think I'm going to direct it to Mr. Prong, because you might know the answer. Is it the law currently in Canada that Government Canada information has to be held within Canada?
Yes.
It is the law.
It is the policy. I don't think it's a law. It's a policy that, in fact, fall under Catherine's authority.
Thank you. I'm sure there'll be questions on that. I just wanted to kind of set the table for that, because there was some discussion about that. Turning now, Ms. Kuzi, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Mr.
You indicated will be available this spring in 2023. Would you be able to provide it to table with the committee when it becomes available, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. This is a product that we are working with multiple departments under the leadership of the Treasury Board Secretariat. There is nothing to hide. It's something that we'll share with the department because it's a tool. So I assume we will be able to share with this committee when the product is ready for distribution. Catherine may want to add on this.
No, that would be something that we'd be happy to share.
Great. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. Will the results of these tests with pilot departments occurring in fall of 2023 be able to be reviewed by parliamentarians, in particular the members of this committee, please?
I think, Mr. Chair, the Member of Parliament is referring here to the automation of guardrail verification. We'll have to find a way to share that with you. What it is basically is that right now there is 12 guardrails. My team, and following the wise advice from the Auditor General, have taken of not only checking once at the beginning, but on an ongoing basis that these guardrails are maintained. So it will be more a monitoring than a one-time exercise. But we are monitoring compliance of each department right now. It's just that it's not automated. It's people that belong in Costa's team that basically take the manual work to verify around 200 instances of cloud regularly to make sure that the department, when using this, they follow the standard. And often it's only enabling a function. But if they move the switch to the left, this is not working anymore. So we need to make sure they maintain that because all of this is protecting the system. So my answer is we can come back at this committee or share with the clerk the result of our review for sure.
Okay, thank you. Madame Luelo, do you think that the Government of Canada is matching cloud adaptation standards as seen abroad?
I think we are experiencing very similar things to what other organizations do at this stage of our maturity. So we are less than 10% in the cloud. I think we are adopting what is standard best practices. And I think we are learning, unfortunately, a lot of the same lessons that organizations learn, which is, I think, one of the key findings of the Auditor General's report was that we have great standards and guardrails in place, but the application of them was inconsistent, which is why the automation is so very important.
Was there an international comparative analysis completed?
Not that I'm aware of, but I might ask my colleague who's been around the table a little bit longer if there was an international benchmark done. Not what I'm aware of.
What I know about that, and maybe our colleagues from the Center on Cybersecurity will have used, we often compare our practice here in Canada to the standards on cybersecurity of the American. So we do comparison, but again, I'm not sure we have a report that will do a broader scan.
So maybe just to add as well, in terms of our assessment of the CSPs or the cloud service providers, we do look at international standards such as ISO, FedRAMP in the United States, as well as SOC 2 Type 2 reports as well, which are required in terms of the assessment process. So we make sure we're very harmonized with the international and U.S. in that space.
Thank you. Mr. Hayes, in your audit, you mentioned the one security weakness was that contract security clauses were unclear and not standard. At Government Operations Committee, we found in some instances that contractors were able to start work on the project without a security clearance in place. Were those the types of issues you found with shared services and public services and Procurement Canada?
In terms of the roles and responsibilities, we were concerned that unclarity led to questions about who was on first, who was going to be dealing with issues when there was an event. But we did also identify that the monitoring and oversight could be improved by both shared services and by PSPC.
And expanding upon that, Mr. Hayes, what security measures for IT contracts were recommended by your organization?
So I won't get into the details of some of the information that we weren't able to include in the report, but what we identified was that for the guardrails, for the security requirements that are in place, that they should be implemented in their entirety, and that ongoing monitoring should be happening as well.
You also recommended in your report that cloud contracts need to have the security requirements clarified within the federal government. Who do you think should be taking on that role?
In my view, this is a role for the Treasury Board Secretariat to provide guidance and policy on.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Ms. Luelo, you mentioned currently less than 10% of government information is on the cloud. Do you think that we should be halting storing more information on the cloud until the recommendations of the Auditor General are implemented?
Just a clarification point, 10% of systems,
Pardon me,
not
10% of
data.
systems,
Those
my
are a little
apologies.
bit different. No, it's okay, but it's important nuance. And
It
I
is.
think that we can continue course and speed. We have actually quite aggressively moved on the Auditor General's findings already, as I outlined in some of my remarks, and we will continue to tighten things as we move along. But there is always, as part of putting a new system into production, i.e. into the cloud, a release to production activity list you go through to make sure things have been met. So we'll be disciplined around making sure for cloud migrations that we pay very close attention to that to ensure we're managing that risk.
And that is your time, Ms. Guzzi. Thank you. Ms. Bradford, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to all our witnesses. I think this is one of the few occasions where we've had practically more witnesses than we actually have committee members. So it's good to see full house today. So I'm going to start with a question for you, Mr. Hayes. What percentage of the government departments that you assessed were deficient regarding their security event management plans as it pertains to cybersecurity and personal information in the cloud?
So we looked at 3 departments. We weren't looking across the entire government, and our results can't be, because it's not a representative sample or anything, our results can't be extrapolated across the government, but the areas that we identified in our report relate to 3 departments.
And did your audit find that any information had been compromised?
We
in
didn't
those
look
3
into
departments?
that degree of specificity. We were looking at the testing of their plans and the implementation of their plans.
Mr. Gupta, for you, what work is being done to ensure that Canada's personal information is safe as we shift to more digital forms of storage?
On an ongoing basis, we're assessing the threats to cloud service providers. We're providing threat assessments on that. We're providing advice and guidance for cloud service providers, including the government and Canadians, in terms of how to secure your cloud systems. And on an ongoing basis, we're seeing how the threat landscape is changing in accordance with technologies and making sure that advice and guidance and information is up to par. For the government, we're also deploying cyber defense services, so we make sure that the technologies that we deploy for the government are actually taking into account the new threat vectors that we're seeing from both classified and unclassified sources, and making sure that those technologies are implemented on our side.
And Mr. Thompson, how does the Government of Canada ensure that cloud service providers meet the Government of Canada's security requirements?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that question. I would just note that we have a physical inspection regime, which has our employees doing the site inspections for cloud service providers, as well as personnel security screening as well. So those are the 2 main activities that PSPC does to ensure that the cloud service providers are meeting their expectations.
This question is for Mr. Gupta or Ms. Luella. Why is the government shifting from a cloud-first strategy to a cloud-smart strategy, and what does that operationally mean?
I'll take that one, and then if Rajiv wants to add. The reason that we're shifting from a cloud first to cloud smart, first of all, cloud, what it allows for is it lets us stand things up very quickly. So where we would take potentially months to stand up an environment where we can start building a new system for Canadians or migrating a new system for Canadians, you can do that in hours or days in cloud. So there's a huge opportunity to move more quickly to deliver service to Canadians. We needed to get the government going in a direction because we were all data centers. And in fact, SSC had an issue around the fact they had some very old data centers. So before we just lifted up and moved to a data center, we said, let's start moving some of the stuff into the cloud. And as part of that learning, one of the things we've learned, many of the things we've learned were pointed out in the Auditor General's report, including the fact that we need more maturity around cost model, and that is why we went sort of into more of a cloud smart model, so that we are really going to put that financial lens on migration to say, is it more efficient when you kind of put all things together, speed and cost, to have it in the cloud or have it in an enterprise data center? So that was really the shift, and we'll continue to tune that as we go forward. As I noted in my remarks, there will never be a world where we will be fully in the cloud, and that's consistent with many large organizations across the globe.
Okay, so thank you for that. And building on that, what are the cost comparisons between managing cloud service within the government versus using third-party providers?
So that's the work that we're undertaking right now, and it's not a one-to-one answer because there is a cost and a benefit to speed, and there is a cost around buying computing from an Amazon Web Services or a Microsoft Azure versus all of the infrastructure that Sunny needs to put in place to physically operate a facility with servers and all the things that we need to host on premise. So we really needed to do what we've done and move some of our systems over to the cloud. So we had some real life examples around the cost and the benefit of a cloud environment versus the cost and the benefit of an enterprise data center. But I would say the theory that it is less expensive to go to the cloud is not a good theory. It is also not a good theory to say that you can get the equivalent amount of agility from a data center environment that you can get from a cloud environment. So we've seen that through COVID, where we've been able to use cloud to move very quickly on some things. So it's all of those things that we need to balance together to come up with what the right economics are, because it takes staffing to do things in both environments, and that has cost associated with it as well.
So with the adoption of a hybrid work model in the public service, employees will need to access personal data remotely regardless of their location. Is there a big difference for the purpose of employee access between cloud or on-premises data centers? I'm not sure whether Mr. Perron wants to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. This is a really good one. We are using cloud as a commercial solution. So Catherine mentioned the name of hyperscaler that offer cloud. But when they have been certified and we have approved utilization, they are integrated into our network. So the traffic, whether this is a service or a program or an application that is in the cloud or it's running into a data center, still comes to our network. And the monitoring tools that the Cybersecurity Center provide and the enhanced monitoring that we have on the Government of Canada network still apply to the what we call workload, let's call that application, that runs in the cloud the same way than it would be in an enterprise data center. So it's why the security requirements, the assessment that is done before we approve an hyperscaler to provide these services, the validation of the guardrails or the security control are so important because it's one more option we have for hosting application, and Catherine explained really well the agility that comes with cloud, but we have to do it in a safe way. We cannot lose the level of security we have built around the traditional environment because we are using a new environment. We find a way to integrate that, and we are never done with this. It's the guardrail we have today will continue to evolve and be perfected over time, but I think what the Auditor General reminded us, do you know now that the 200 instances of cloud are organized, are configured in line with these guardrails? And frankly, this raised alert on us, and we put the team on checking on this. And I was really glad to receive a report last spring that we were in good place in terms of compliance. And the few departments that had challenge, they were notified, and with the support of the GCCIO, we got them to redress. But this is an ongoing watch. We always have to make sure that nothing is being changed and that the level of security remain there. So it's why automation is important, because human intervention with 5 instances is one thing. When we are at 200, 400, 500, it will become almost impossible to have our eyes on everything all the time. So automation is the way for us to get an alert if a guardrail is being changed by a user or a department user. So when I talk about the department, there is a few number of people that can change these, but for various reasons, someone may decide or by mistake to change one of the configuration element, and we need to be alerted, so we redress that in a timely manner. But this is not different than when we were running data center before. It's just a different way to apply these guardrails.
Okay, thank you. No, you're way over the time, but you're wise not to interrupt because committee members know when we have a good question, I like to hear the answer. But that was, I'm sorry Mr. Fragascato is not timing me today because he'd have to give a lot of time to the Liberal bench. But anyway, that was a good question, a good answer. Thank you. Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés, vous avez
Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés for 8 minutes, 6 minutes. Well, first, I would like to thank all the witnesses for being present today. Indeed, it is important to talk about the subject at hand today. I'll start directly with a question for Mr. Hayes. The Auditor General's office has been saying that security and cybersecurity, but not only cybersecurity, which in turn brings other issues beyond the cloud computing world. You've talked about information attacks and threats and damages, but you've also talked about the frameworks that should come from the Treasury Board. Did I understand that correctly? Inaudible. Inaudible. We have noticed that there are some there is lacking a little bit, and so we have said that in our report. Indeed, there is information that is maybe too delicate to include in the report, and we don't want undesirable parties to be aware of our shortcomings. Are there any hypothetical issues that you can bring up in front of the committee today? I can give an example that was cited in the report. It's important to do follow-ups on the requirements. That is an example that we actually did not include in our report. There are other details as well. The recommendations we've made to the department is to do what is included in the policy. When you say the department, which one are you speaking of? We're talking about PSPC, procurement. So, in your opinion, who should do this? It should be us to do the follow-up, and it is important for us to make a note in the report that we made this recommendation in order for us to be able to do so. I'm sorry, I meant the shortcomings. What were you talking about? I was talking about public services. Now, I'll ask a question to Ms. Luello on the Treasury Board and maybe a lack of framework with regards to the methods, the security methods that should be at the core of every department with regards to sensitive information. When the Auditor General noted that there was an issue, did you not think that perhaps you should slow down the process of uploading information onto the cloud in order to wait till you had enough security before continuing?
Thank you for the question. In fact, it was interesting in that the Auditor General was doing their work while there was actually their assessment. Well, there was a lot of work underway. So some of the items I walked you through in terms of we had updated our GCC SEMP, we had updated our roles and responsibilities, we've updated our policy guidance around Canadians' information in the cloud. We are kind of arriving at a destination together where a lot of the things that were rightfully pointed out in the audit were already well in progress to be remediated because we were at a certain critical scale of size that we were doing that reflection ourselves. Now, certainly there were things that the Auditor General pointed out, but none, from my opinion, that are not well enough along in terms of the improved guidance we're providing, the improved monitoring that is in place that would cause us to slow down our progress. And I would just note, like, our progress is very slow when you compare it to other organizations, certainly that I've worked for. We move at a very slow pace. So I think I would consider it a manageable risk.
D'accord. Mais donc, vous avez continué.
So, if I understand correctly, you continue to upload potentially sensitive information. You say that politically you updated everything. Did you follow up in order to ensure that this policy was indeed applied by all departments?
So we are just actually in the process, and beginning of April, we have all of the departments across government sending in their annual plans on service and digital. That will be a good place for us to check to make sure that they have implemented within their plans some of the guidance that we've been providing. The second is for some of the larger programs that are going on, and I noted our benefits delivery modernization program. We are working very closely with them as they are building out the system. They have not put data into a production environment in the cloud. So I think all of the checks and balances are in place, but certainly to Sunny's point, automating this is very important. When you put humans into the equation to measure whether there's compliance, that's not a sustainable model. So we will be doing regular checks with the departments, as well as we continue to do cyber event management program. We just completed one. We do those on an annual basis. So it's my belief we've got enough checks and balances in place, including when we turn something over into production, a checklist that we go through that allows us to manage that risk.
Et voilà, merci beaucoup. Mr. Desjardins, vous avez la parole pour 6 minutes.
Thank you very much.
I too want to thank the witnesses for being present with us today, and I want to thank the auditor and the Auditor General's office for this really important audit. I think it brings to mind, particular questions amongst Canadians as to the confidence they have into what kind of safety and security mechanisms of their personal information. It's one of the most critical things I think governments across the world are dealing with as we transform our systems into digital ones. And I think that I learned quite a bit, I'm sure my colleagues did as well, as to the nature of how that's being operated in the government. And it was a surprise to me in many ways to see, one, the 10% of those systems. And, we're really at the very start of this in some ways. And I think it's incredibly important for us to get these initial aspects right. And I believe this may be the first or second audit in relation to personal information and when it comes to the cloud. I'm not certain if there was one prior to this, so this may be the first. Is that correct, Mr. Hayes?
This is the first that we did that was focused on this area.
Yep. Okay. So thank you very much. And so in some ways, we've come together many different departments, and sometimes, often, I'd say, when different departments are tasked with doing one big job, there's sometimes an issue of trying to figure out who's in charge of doing that work. In particular, other aspects of what may not be the focus of the departments because of just the broadness of the engagement of several ministries and departments are things like that sometimes slip. And some of those things I think that the Auditor General points out were some of the findings under the environment. So section 7.5 onwards to the conclusion, there's recommendations on environment. And I noticed that, in particular, of course, Treasury Board has a mandate to ensure that there's sustainability plans and environmental aspects pertaining to the work of government. It's noticed in the report that Public Works and Government Services was not active in a requirement to see the contracts between some of the cloud service providers to maintain information or data collection on environment outcomes. And so I just wanted to better understand how that process is going. This audit is a bit older, and so we have had some time. I think the department has accepted the findings of the Auditor General. And so I suppose my questions are to Paul. In relation to what progress can you report regarding shared services and PCPC's collaboration to further align the approach to the cloud procurement?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm happy to indicate that we now have made modifications to the terms and conditions. So the supply arrangements that are used for cloud service providers as of next week, as we begin the new fiscal year, these will be modified to include the requirements, the new requirements with respect to greenhouse gas emissions. This pertains to the broader set of procurements, but also to cloud procurements. So happy to say that is going to be in place starting next week. So any new call-ups against those supply arrangements, so any new activity will be subject to these new greenhouse gas emission requirements.
So if I understand that correctly, the 14 contracts that are currently in operation won't have those requirements.
It'll be any new call-ups against those contracts. So any new activities that are done by these pre-qualified suppliers to be qualified for these new activities under these existing arrangements would require them to comply with these attestations on greenhouse gas emissions.
And so that the process that these providers would have to go through in terms of declaring their emissions, their greenhouse gases emissions, is that similar or consistent with how the Canadian government collects that data to date?
Thank you for that question too. This is a good question because it actually, we're changing a broader set of procurement instruments at the same time. There was an announcement a couple of months ago, I believe, on broader requirements for procurement, and this kind of fits into that requirement for all procurements above $4.5 million to require this attestation based on recognized standards for tracking of greenhouse gas emissions and having a plan in place towards net zero.
And just to follow up on that, I know it's my understanding that your department also accepted a recommendation to look at standardizing the templates for these for moving forward. And so what's the progress on those standardized templates for these contracts?
So on that one too, I'm happy to report that we do have standardized contract language, and there's a working group that's been established that's noted in the Auditor General's report. It was established over the course of the audit, and we now have essentially a single window to work with departments and ensure that we have standard language. And my colleague Sonny Perron, his team and mine work very closely on these new aligned instruments.
So who currently monitors the environmental impact of the digital services within the government? Maybe it's a better question for Catherine.
I do not know the answer to that, but I will revert back to the committee with a better answer than what I'll give you on the fly here. So thank you. Good question.
Yeah, thanks for that. With any supply in terms of written documents to that would be helpful as well.
Yes.
And then just moving towards some of the other representatives in relation to training. So it's my understanding that the public, or maybe it's actually still for the member from Treasury Board, there has been mandatory training within the civil service to look at sustainability and aspects of environmental declaration for information in terms of how the government either pollutes or doesn't pollute, but how do you ensure that there's actual compliance by other departments that you're partnered with in actually reporting that information?
Again, a wonderful question, but as the Chief Information Officer of Canada, that's not within my purview. I will make sure I go back to our greening government folks who will have a very good answer for you on that. Thank you.
And thank you very much. That is the time. Turning to our second round, Mr. Cram, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. I guess I'll start with Ms. Luelo from the Treasury Board. Why is the Government of Canada migrating data and systems to the cloud?
The Government of Canada is migrating systems and information to the cloud for the couple of the reasons I've outlined. One is it gives us speed and agility. We've seen some of the challenges that we've had in meeting service levels to Canadians, and our hope is that we create digital environments that are elastic and changeable in a different way than some of our old, more monolithic, if I could use that word, systems. The second thing is that it does give us a platform for a more modern tool set, which is a really important way for us to attract digital talent into government. I've talked often and loudly about the digital talent gap in Canada, but particularly in the Government of Canada. And part of us attracting great talent into the government to work on this mission critical work that we do is having modern tools for those professionals to use.
Okay, so your first answer was speed. Is that speed in implementing a project from start to finish, or speed in other ways as well?
Yeah, so speed of implementing new projects, but speed of actually changing systems. So imagine we introduce a new policy, a new program, and some of the exceptional things that were done throughout COVID were done in ways that were extraordinary. And in a normal organization where you've got a good cloud footprint, you're able to actually stand up and build things in a much quicker fashion than in our traditional environment. I would also note that there is advantage to using these large scale organizations whose full-time day job is running these environments, and there are benefits from a security and just general keeping things modern and not getting behind that cloud environments provide to us. So I think it's a dual purpose, and certainly any of my colleagues that would like to, I think I got that okay.
Okay. So on page 15 of the report, when it said that there was no costing model in place, is there a cost-benefit analysis done before every IT project? Is that safe to say?
There's a cost-benefit analysis done on every project, and part of that cost-benefit of analysis is, what type of hosting, so whether it's cloud or whether it's the data centers that Sunny provides. Some of it, because we are very much at the beginning of the beginning in the Government of Canada, I would say that we weren't fully appreciative of some of the costs of moving to cloud, so we found it more difficult to make the move. We did not, in some cases, take the opportunity to simplify and reduce the platform of what we moved to the cloud, so that increases your cost. And we did not have good visibility on what it costs to operate and run in an environment like the cloud, because we relied on the shared services group to run all the data centers. So it was very difficult to sort of compartmentalize how much does it cost to run Stats Canada versus CSE versus ESDC. So part of the great opportunity of just having done a small component of this is now we've got some real world data. And the other kind of cool thing about the cloud is that we can now take environments that are in there and we can simplify and decrease them. And as our consumption goes down with a cloud provider, our bill goes down. And so there's advantages as we start to tune and calibrate that will reflect itself in cost savings.
Okay. Is it safe to say, though, that for a cost-benefit analysis for a particular project, the time savings up front in setting up a new data center, that would have been included in the cost-benefit analysis for a particular project? Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Okay. So would it ever be the case that there would be a project whose sole purpose is to migrate data to the cloud, or is it when you have an old legacy system and you're looking to redevelop it from scratch that investigating the cloud as an option would come into consideration?
There's two scenarios that we would look at, and I'll turn to my colleague in SSC to complement the answer. One is we're moving something old into the cloud, and that would include the thing that the system does and the data that allows the system to do the thing that it does, very simply put. The second thing is we could be standing up a net new system. And so there's two reasons why we would move to the cloud. One is to get out of an old data center and manage that risk. And the second is that we're building something net new, which we did during COVID and will continue to do. And it actually made more sense to do it in the cloud because we could turn up an environment, which is where you build something, in days versus months.
And that is your time, Mr. Cram.
Okay.
Turning to Ms. Yip now. Ms. Yip, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please. You're on mute, Ms. Yip.
Sorry about that. What are the benefits of storing information digitally in terms of service delivery to Canadians? I'll just open that up to anybody.
Yeah, so if I understand your question correctly, and please forgive me if I don't and re-ask it, the benefits to having a digital service experience for Canadians could probably be best exemplified by the fact that we have Canadians that need to apply in a physical paper format to get their passports renewed versus having the opportunity to do that in a fully digitized format, which is what we aspire to do. So what it allows for is agility and speed for the person receiving the service, and it actually reduces the amount of paper and forms that government employees need to process. And, there's an environmental side of that as well that I think is obvious, but I don't know, Sunny, if you want to add.
If I can have, Mr. Chair, the digital is not an option. It's where we host that data, whether it's a data center that is controlled by the Government of Canada or it's the cloud or in between. And the reality is a lot of the work we are going to do going forward will be hybrid, where we are going to leverage traditional data center for some aspect of the business or the process, and we are going to leverage the cloud for some other aspect. So all this need to be tightly connected, and the business case that is being done at the beginning is about how we optimally leverage the various hosting option. And cloud, like Catherine said, brings that option to scale up. So if there is peak of demand, think about the tax season, think about the passport season where there is something, think about the demand at the border. These systems can take much more demand if they are in the cloud because they can ask for more compute. When there is a peak, we pay more, and when there is a lower demand, we pay less. If it's run in a traditional data center that I operate, I need to build a farm of servers to be ready to take peak time. So it might not be cost effective. So when we do the business analysis of that, we also have to look at the cycle that some of these programs or these services are going through. And this is where we get to figuring what is the best digital hosting option. And sometimes it's a little bit in the cloud and a little bit on data center. But it really depends on the business, the type of operation. Catherine gave some examples. So each one have its own cycle, its own demand. But that data need to be hosted somewhere. And the application that compute that data needs to be hosted somewhere. So this is on each case, we are doing a business case.
Thank you. Ms. Leolo, in answering Ms. Sinclair Desgagnet's question, you mentioned that the pace remains slow. Why is that?
I think that, first of all, there's a funding constraint that we are trying to manage the highest risk systems within government first, and those are big, complex systems. We're talking about immigration systems. We're talking about benefit delivery systems. So those aren't things you do quickly. They take time to do, and so that's sort of some of the built-in slowness to the system. I would also say, just putting my private sector hat on for a minute, we are highly risk adverse in government. And I think part of the conversation in the digital space needs to shift to the risk of not moving a little more quickly and the risk of doing nothing. So if I could be so candid as to say that. So there's a pacing element around the complexity of our systems that is normal and appropriate. And then there is a general heaviness of process and heaviness of risk aversion in the digital space that we need to tackle from a cultural perspective.
What can we do to move this cultural perspective to go a little faster to keep up with maybe the private sector?
It's an excellent question. Thank you for that question. I think that there are things that are happening right now within the government around some of the committees that help manage this, where we are trying to move out of the way some of the systemic barriers that exist. We've got things around skills, we've got things around decision making. So I do feel we're making some progress there. I think from an overall MP perspective and ministerial perspective, just support for the fact that Canada is falling behind globally in digital government delivery, and we can't continue to operate with the number of humans that we have doing the things that we have them doing. So I think that as you talk about new policies and programs, this is advice that I give to the minister that I get the privilege to support, is that ask the questions around digital first delivery. And that includes great digital tools for the public servants that work so hard every day to serve Canadians.
And thank you very much. Maintenant, Madame Sinclair Desgagnets.
2.5 minutes for Ms. Sinclair Desgagnets. When we talk about cost benefit, this is really in my ballpark. So first, true analysis would also include a pretty detailed risk assessment. Can you confirm that there has been one? And if so, how is it possible that some systems were implemented before we were even able to see that there were some very important shortcomings?
Yes, certainly there were risk assessments that were completed. I can confirm that, and my colleague from SSC is double confirming that. I think that we're also learning around the robustness of those risk assessments as we've moved to the cloud. Should we ask different questions? Should we look for different information? And certainly as it exists around some of the findings from the Auditor General around the implementation of the guardrails, the two big lessons we take away from that is automation and making sure that we have a good compliance framework which we put in place.
Parce que quand vous dites que le gouvernement est très averse au risque.
When you say that the government is very risk adverse, that seems quite contradictory to the fact that we've found some very important or very major shortcomings and breaches. And then you also say that you are doing this risk assessment. Has the cost of the total shutdown of the government been included and evaluated? Because that is one of the risks if there is a cyber attack. If a real cost-benefit analysis was truly done and the risk of a complete shutdown of the system was taken into consideration, that still you went forward with this automatic implementation of this system. I don't know the exact terms, cybernetics and so on. I'm quite surprised, and there is a contradiction. I'd very much like a clear answer on that.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Question?
Thank you for the question.
The version I'm pointing to is that it is normal for organizations that are moving through modernization to learn lessons, and we are learning some lessons. What I want to avoid is us pulling back and saying we're going to stop because a couple of things weren't done properly. We're learning from those, we're implementing, and we were thoughtful about not doing our big systems first. So, for example, old age security, EI, CPP, as we look at those are systems that are coming later that we will have taken the opportunity to learn from some of the smaller systems that we've moved to the cloud. And so I would say that my concern around your question around whole of government shutdown, absolutely, that is something on this team's mind constantly when we think about cyber. And Sunny said it very well. The cloud still allows us to have all of the protections that the Centre for Cybersecurity provides. This is a unique asset that we have for the Government of Canada that makes me feel very comfortable, a different type of asset than I had when I worked in private sector. So although we have learned some things, the incredible support that we get from the Cyber Centre is a compensating control, if I could say that.
And thank you very much. Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to just mention before I continue, it is, Catherine, your attendance here is quite impressive. Oftentimes in this committee, we don't get as frank of answers, and it gives and impedes the work of this place, in particular our committee. And so I really want to just thank you for your honesty, because it allows us to do the work that I think is really important to making good recommendations come our report. You mentioned a few things in your testimony, or sorry, just in your previous answers that I want to follow up on. One, you mentioned the issue of capacity and the issue of talent acquisition, in particular the talent gap that we have in digital services in Canada. Can you describe what you mean by that in particular in terms of what that gap looks like? Is it in service IT folks, or like what are we talking about when you say there's a capacity gap there?
I would like to talk about this for 40 minutes, but I will do it very quickly because I know we're tight for time. We have anywhere from sort of 25 to 30% vacancy rate in technical jobs in the government. That is relatively consistent, by the way, with across Canada. We are seeing particular pinch points in cybersecurity, cloud computing, and architecture. So there is a few areas that we are competing with companies all across Canada. We need to do a better job of lighting up technology people within this country for what we do for Canadians. No one gets to do what we do. And it is my mission to go out and have many more people come in and do a tour of service within government doing digital work. First of all, I think there would be a different understanding of the complexity within government and the things that we need to do. I say that with all humbleness, having worked 30 years in private sector and looked across and said, what's going on in there? And I came into government and said, oh my goodness, this is very complicated. I think it would be also great to have people from government go out into private sector and learn what it's like to have quarterly shareholder meetings and some of the metrics that drive industry and a lot of the innovation in our country. So that is a huge issue, not just for the government of Canada, but for Canada.
Just to respond quickly and try to get one more question, but one piece of it, well, actually, I'd invite you to supply our committee with a written response and the capacity recommendations you may have. I think that's an important piece. 40 minutes is a long time, but we might be able to do it in a written response.
Short, yes.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I believe John, do I run it? Is it 2 minutes and 30 seconds?
Your time is up, Mr.
Well, that was a good answer.
Yes, but you squeezed a lot in it in that time. Mr. McCall, you have the floor for 5.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I echo Mr. Desjardins' comments. It's refreshing to actually come to any committee and actually get forthright answers and not word salad. So far. Mr. Hayes, Mr. Goulet, and Mr. Lombardi, thanks for the report. I appreciate everything you've put into it. I just want to start with the three of you. 7.16 in the 7.16 in the report, comment about the requirements for security in cloud were not followed. But we only audited 3 departments. Do we need to do a wider audit if you've come up with these concerns with just the 3 departments that you audited?
Some of our findings relate to the central agencies rules and the oversight, monitoring, and implementation support. So I think that if the central agencies are addressing the weaknesses that we found and filling the gaps that we found, then we should see some better implementation. We are planning on following up on this report on a faster basis than what we would normally do because of the fact that this is early stages and there's work to be done.
With the central agencies, we've seen on other reports where someone actually took one of my lines of who's on first. We've seen the departments all, well, I'm not responsible. Well, everyone's responsible, but I'm not accountable. Who should be, in this very serious report and follow-up needed, what should be the main department that should be accountable or should be in charge of ensuring everyone falls in line and follows the rules, but also addresses the security issues?
So my apologies for taking your line. I think it was me that stole it today. In terms of accountabilities, I'll say that departments have to be accountable for the information that is entrusted to them. The roles and responsibilities of the central agencies is relatively straightforward. Treasury Board provides the policy direction. It gets to the point where, though, when there's an event and roles and responsibilities are not clear, that there might be delays or there might be something missed along the way, or in monitoring and ongoing supervision, who's looking at that? If there's unclarity, somebody might not actually do it. So our point is that everybody should know exactly what they should be responsible for doing all the time.
Okay. In the next paragraph down in 7.17, you state the government must take immediate action. What is immediate in respect to this report? We've seen other reports where 9 years later down the road and we're still waiting for what is immediate? 1 month, 1 year, 6 months?
So we were pleased to see the timeframes that were put in the responses to the recommendations, and from our perspective, those were reasonable timeframes to take action. Obviously, we are dealing with an ever-evolving and very dynamic field, so there has to be constant vigilance with this. Okay. I don't know if I said that word, constant vigilance. It was under my breath there.
Thanks. I wasn't going to use that term, so you can have that one. Thanks. Ms. Luello, thanks for your comments. It's probably your direct nature today is very much appreciated. You mentioned departments are delivering plans to you in April. What happens if who's deciding if those plans are acceptable? Is it yourself? Do they then go back to the minister or to the deputy minister and say, this is not good, resubmit?
That is correct. So they are reviewed. I have portfolio leads within OCIO who have got accountability for groupings of departments. And so they're able to review them not just on an individual basis, but as they compare to sort of their colleague cohort group.
Is there a due date in April for these?
I believe it's April 6th, but it might be April 3rd.
Would you be able to provide to the committee when they show up of which departments have met the acceptable level?
I'm happy to do that.
Oh, wonderful. Who are the, I'm not sure if it'd be Mr. Perron, well, I guess Ms. Luello, who are the companies we're using for hosting cloud?
So I will let Sunny answer that, but I think just for pure cloud services, we have got 8 service providers, if I've got that number correctly, and I'll let my colleague from PSPC or SSC answer that.
Because I wanted one more last question. Maybe you can just submit it to us, Mr. Perron. The on-guard test you talked about, do you have the results or the conclusions from those tests?
We do those on a regular basis. So since I've been with the government, we've done 2. We just finished the second one, and I'm expecting the report in the next number of weeks.
Is that something you can share with the department?
Maybe
not the exact reports,
with the
but perhaps
caveat of
conclusions?
anything that does not expose risk publicly, yes.
Fantastic. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And just, Mr. Perron, are you agreeable? Mr. McCauley asked for a document that or a response. I don't know if you caught it. Well, what you
I'm
asked
just looking for the name of the companies.
Yeah.
I can get it from the public accounts if you haven't
Mr.
got
Chair,
it.
it would be a great pleasure
Okay.
to
Yes,
respond
I
to this
appreciate it. I'd
request.
just like to get acknowledgement of that.
Thanks.
So, very good. Very good. Turning now to Mr. Fagascatos, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to everyone for being here. I want to look at the issue from a big picture perspective, if I can put it that way. In looking at the report, one of the key findings, obviously, is that, and I'm quoting now, information stored digitally, whether on premises, in data centers, or in the cloud, is exposed to risks of being compromised. So I understand the importance of getting into the technical details and the minutiae, if I can follow what Mr. McCauley has asked at this meeting and at others. It is important for MPs to delve into the details that way, but I also think of it from the perspective of constituents who want to understand this and what's being done in response in general terms as well. So what is being done to address this fundamental challenge, which I see as one of the key findings in this report?
I'd love.
And that whoever wishes to take it. Yeah.
Maybe I can start. This is a statement that is true in Canada. It's true everywhere in the world. It's just a pure fact. When you are into a digital world, everything is always at risk. Okay. And we need to start from there, otherwise we would not be doing our job. I think in Canada, for the government of Canada, we have an infrastructure that can stand a lot. We have the process to handle these situations where there might be something detected, early intelligence, but also detected on our system, the way to isolate, contain, address, remediate. But we will never be done. This is what I was saying a bit earlier. So I think the point that the AG, the Auditor General, made at the beginning of the report is very important. Everything is at risk, and we need always to validate and enhance our safeguards. And then I'm sure Catherine and Rajiv can add on this.
Before they do, sir, so there's never going to be 100% protection. I think that's important for us to understand. And that's not just true of the Canadian approach.
Yes.
But what other democracies are finding as well, that this complete full safe system is not possible. Yeah, no, that's fair.
Exactly, and I think it's the departure point of our work, because if we work with too much security from believing that we have everything in place and there will not be risk, we would be surprised pretty quickly, because the threat actors are very creative, and this is where Canadian Security Establishment and the Cyber Security Center is bringing us the intelligence and the signal that for what we need to prepare next all the time.
Okay.
I would agree. I mean, the premise of that comment, I assume from the report, was that, we had guardrails in place and these sorts of things, but they really have to be put in place and be used to be having that real-life implementation and practical result in terms of protecting the system. So very important to have those in place. So putting the right security controls in place is very important. In terms of moving forward, I think it's been said, but we're continuing to advance our advice and guidance in terms of how to properly protect against the threats. We are probably the only country that I know of that has cloud-based sensors and a security organization monitoring the cloud environment. So these threats actually exist in cloud. They exist on-prem as well, and that's something that I wanted to point out, but very important for us to
Mr. Perron used the phrase threat actor. So how do we keep up with threat actors? What are the approaches that are used to constantly be monitoring the new tactics, techniques that that those who would try to cause problems to our systems, how do we keep tabs on them?
Someone was saying who's first. In fact, it's a team sport here, and sometimes there is not really a first, but there is a primary role holder for looking forward, identifying what can be new issues we have to prepare and work on and anticipate, and this is the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity. They are looking forward, and they are bringing to the operator, which is me, or our organization, the intel about here's what you need to do and fix, because we believe that this will be a new risk that we did not contemplate in the past, and it's very, very important. And the integration with the policy lead in terms of how do we deal with this is critical. And we have this in Canada. We are lucky. We need to invest in this all the time because we have to practice. It's good that we are doing tests.
Yes.
But also the real life bring tests to our ability to work together.
Thank you, Mr. Perron. Time is limited, and so I was going to ask about collaboration between departments to pick up on what you were getting at, but I think it suffices to say that there is collaboration and dialogue taking place. So let me ask another question which relates to human resources. Are you able to recruit the best and brightest into the public service to carry this out? I know that there's a huge interest among young people.
I'm going to wait for an answer, but
Right.
your question has gone over, but I do want to get an answer, so I'm not cutting off the answer, but just the...
No problem. Yeah, are you
preamble.
able to find
Yes.
people and tell me about that?
So we have actually currently got a cybersecurity posting that's up right now, and we are incredibly pleased with the number of applicants that we've had. The Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity is an employer of choice. Lots of tech folks want to go work there. I think the thing that we are struggling with is the ability to onboard people into the system and the security clearance requirements, particularly in these cybersecurity roles. And so we're looking at efficiencies within the security screening policy, which I also have as part of my portfolio, to see what we can do to remove friction from the system to bringing in new public servants, but making sure that, particularly in the space of cybersecurity, that we are not creating any risk with those new employees. That's incredibly important.
And thank you very much. Starting now, our third round will probably be our last round, given the time, but that's still six individual members asking questions. Mr. Cram, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to circle back to the auditors now. There was a few pages in the report about promoting environmental responsibility and sustainable development. And Mr. Hayes, I believe you mentioned this in your opening statement as well. So help me understand. If I have a whole bunch of files that I want to save to one cloud service or another cloud service or an in-house server, how could the environmental impact or carbon footprint be significantly different between one and the other?
It depends on the type of services that you're going to be getting. So in the cloud context, if you think about, I'm going to put a hypothetical out there. If you think about an analytics service that might be very high powered, it uses energy. And so how is the company that's providing that service dealing with the environmental aspects of the service that it provides? What we're really asking for is for information to be provided to the government so that they can have a clear picture of what they are procuring and whether there are environmentally preferable options, and basically for them to go in eyes wide open.
Okay, maybe I will come to the representatives from the department. At the bottom of page 19 of the report, I'd like to read a quote. It says, "Although the department's requested information from providers about their environmental commitments and the status of their operations, they did not require it or confirm its accuracy when provided." So I was wondering what information was provided and what differences were there from one option to another?
To the establishment of the cloud framework agreement, where we have 8 qualified vendors. We had asked initially when they were qualified, among many things we were validating, what was their environmental commitment and if they had a net zero commitment toward 2050. So we have done that. We had this in the book for 7 out of the vendors that were qualified at the end. What we don't necessarily have is an attestation. And I think we are working on getting this. So it's not only I said, but they need to be able to demonstrate the results. And like the team from the Auditor General looked at, not all the workloads or not all the application that we are putting in the cloud have the same demand on the infrastructure. So we need to be able to compare if we do this in the cloud versus running this into an enterprise data center. Do I consume more energy? Do I produce more gas emission? What will be the difference? And this is something that without the addition of the clause in the contract, we will not be able to do. And this is where we need to go, because otherwise, if you ask me 5 years from now, are we consuming less or more, producing less or more if it's in the data center or in the cloud, I would not have the data. And frankly, if we want to advance toward these targets, we need to have it. We are really at the beginning here. What is in the cloud? It's really tiny. And a lot of departments are using the cloud right now for experimentation. So it's not like major computing that is there. Some departments are more advanced than others, but a lot of the work we do in the cloud is really small. This is going to change in the future, and it's why we need to put these controls in place.
Okay, so on page 18 of the report, the auditors identified this as a missed opportunity. Is that language maybe a bit strong? If such a tiny percentage of the data and applications have been moved to the cloud, is missed opportunity a bit strong? Like, would potential opportunity in the future maybe be more accurate?
Well, Mr. Chair, I cannot really comment on the decision to use these words or not. I would say you're probably right in your allusion that the potential of the future is more important than what we have done so far in the past. But if we don't take the step now, and changing these clauses and putting these requirements means that my team, and Costa was part of that, is engaging with the industry and say, how can we do this? Getting their views about how this could work, because we do not want to invent requirement and clause that will not work for them, cannot be built and cannot be met in the future. So there was a fair bit of work in the last few months between us and public PSPC to really make sure that those who provide cloud services give us their view about would this work? And this is why we are really close to be able to release these new practice, because the industry told us this is the right way to go. We can comply with these requirements. Costa, I don't know if you want to add anything on this.
Okay. I think I'm out of time anyway.
Is your time,
okay.
Mr. Cram? Turning out to Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Chair. I too want to thank the witnesses for being here today. In fact, I think, Mr. Perron, I remember sitting on OGO, Operations Committee, back in 2016, talking about shared services and the fact that there were still servers in closets in some departments. Am I right?
It would have been my predecessor, Mr. Chair, saying that, but this is right.
There we go. So we have come a long way since then, and certainly the demands on for service delivery to Canadians, protecting data from international threats, from cyber threats, and balancing that with costs is a very important consideration. So on the just on the aspect of service delivery, something that I found very interesting in the 2023 budget was we're moving toward automated services, such as in the delivery, allowing Canadians to complete their tax returns in an automated fashion. Is this something, do you feel that we're up to the job to be able to provide this service?
Well, this is a question that will probably be better addressed by Canada Revenue Agency, but I have to say that digital enablement is essential. These days and age, if we want to provide agile services, be able to deal with peak demand, we have to be digital. We have to provide the right infrastructure. Right now, a lot of the infrastructure at the Canada Revenue Agency depends on what we call mainframe, which is, I would say, in the past, this was the best thing that you could have when cloud did not exist. Now, the cloud can bring this kind of high compute capacity, high velocity that we had only with mainframe in the past. And mainframe are supercomputer running into data center. So I think the cloud, if we take with the team of the audit here, provide us with much more opportunity to do this. Sometimes not only with big program, like think about Canada Revenue Agency is probably the largest programs that depend on technology in the government of Canada. Now, with the cloud, we can have that kind of velocity for something that is way smaller as well, and analytical work. So there is great potential there. Are we up to? Catherine said that we have a lot of challenge, talent, multiple priority in the government of Canada, but I believe we have built the foundational work. And hopefully, we have less server hidden into closet. But what I want with the work we are doing on cloud early on is to avoid that there is cloud instances that are there that we are not aware around this table. We need to manage this as an enterprise so we don't get into the mess that existed in the past in terms of how we had distributed data center and server everywhere. So we have done this cleanup. There is a lot of work still to do, but we have to be really organized the way we leverage cloud so we don't create this and we leverage and build expertise. We are organized. We have common rules, so we don't expose ourselves. And if there is an incident somewhere, we know what is out there, and we know how to take control back, so we avoid the damage and the consequence of incidents. So being organized at the enterprise level and the player around this table are essential to make this happen.
Do you want to jump in there?
I think it's a great question. Like, we don't have a choice. Canadians expect it in every other part of their day-to-day life. They are engaging digitally with companies all over Canada. And so I do think, to Sunny's point, we're up to the challenge, but we have a very big hill to climb. And I think what we're talking about here is getting the right foundations in place and then not being afraid that we've learned a few things and push on, but push on in a smarter, better, more organized fashion.
Excellent, and I do appreciate that you've been conscious of the cost-benefit analysis, has already been brought up in this meeting. But I'd like Canadians to understand just what the threats are that we're facing. Mr. Gupta, how many cyber threat activities against us would you say that we experience on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I mean, the threat against the government of Canada has been high for a long time. So we always talk about, the data that the blocks that we're doing against the government of Canada, just in terms of activity. We say 4 to 7 billion blocks per day. That's just a lot of reconnaissance activity and other sorts of threats, but the threats are still there. And we've enumerated those in our National Cyber Threat Assessment as well. Really, cybercrime, the sophistication of cybercrime has really increased in the past few years. Nation states are still there. We named, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea as the primary countries that we're worried about. So we still have the sophistication of the state-sponsored threat actors, but we also have, the rise of cybercrime in this space as well, which has proven to be very lucrative, I would say, from a ransomware perspective and others. So really fueling the threat in that space. So very important for us to learn from those threats, which we do on a daily basis. We are the national CERT, so we see what's happening across Canada to a certain extent, but also work with our partners to make sure that we're taking everything that we're learning from those threats, baking it into advice and guidance that we work with our partners here to make sure that we're putting the best recommendations out, but then also building that into our security analytics and the types of defensive solutions that we use for the government. And then we couple that, of course, with what we learn from our signals intelligence. CSE is kind of fortunate in that we have the Cyber Center, but we also have our foreign signals intelligence that tracks cyber threat actors around the world and gives us that intel that we can actually use to inform our advice and guidance for Canadians.
Thank you very much. Madame Sinclair Desgagnés, vous avez 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés. Some of the cost analysis, according to best practices, seem to not have made it into the process, and it's quite concerning. I'm citing PSPC and SSC did not include environmental criteria in their cloud requirements. Normally, when you do proper analyses, these are included. Are there evaluations, or did this recommendation was it taken into consideration? But then, when the report was submitted, you started doing environmental impact evaluations afterwards when you had contracts with other companies? Between SSC and PSPC, we have, as I said before, been in contact with the industry to better outline the services and to get the proper information to see what the environmental impact will be. In a few weeks or in early April, we should have results. And then can you tell me examples of criteria that will be integrated? Costa, do we have the details with us with regards to the criteria that were added?
Question, just to answer that directly, the answer is it's in alignment with Canada's commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and the net zero.
Concrètement, excusez-moi, mais concrètement, c'est quoi?
Sorry, but more specifically, what's included?
In terms of the accuracy of what they're providing, like companies like Google provide their commitments on greenhouse gas emissions for their operations publicly. So 7 of the 8 providers that we deal with in the cloud space at Shared Services Canada have met or exceeded those targets in a public fashion, and we're following up with the 8th.
Est-ce que vous pourriez me soumettre la liste de critères?
If you could supply the list of criteria and environmental impact that will be included, as well as a deadline, that would be great.
Deuxième partie de la question, la mise en place, c'est le début avril.
We will be implementing early April, so we're already there. With regards to additional information in the contracts, we will be able to provide it to you within the coming weeks, and we will do so through the clerk. Thank you very much.
You have the floor for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just, I believe it's our final round, and so I just want to offer my thanks to all the witnesses here today in your service. I think it's important that Canadians understand the value of digital infrastructure, and you've been very patient with us, knowing that we're not experts in this field. And so I want to just thanks for your accessibility in this discussion. I do want to return to trying to understand this signal intelligence. It was mentioned a few times. One aspect or fact that was submitted today was, if I'm correct, was that we're the only, did you say I think it was Catherine mentioned, or maybe, I can't remember which witness, but we're the only country currently utilizing signal information. Is that correct?
No, I would say that's not correct.
Okay.
It might have been a reference to cloud-based sensors, which is kind of our definition. We made up the term, so it's probably easy to say. But at the same point in time, we haven't seen the analogous type of capability through the partners that we work with. So I would caveat it as such.
Okay, and what is that exactly?
So that's basically one of the guardrails, which is very important, is that as a government entity stands up a cloud tenancy, we have to be baked in from the start to be able to get telemetry. So we get log analysis and other sorts of data that helps us analyze from the start of the instantiation of this tenancy back at CSE. We can actually look at this data and detect threats right across the board on an enterprise scale. So it gives us kind of a common enterprise monitoring standard for cloud and gives us that visibility into the cloud tenancies right from the start. Often mistakes happen early on when people don't know how to configure their cloud tenancies right, so being baked in is very important.
Yeah, no kidding. And so I can see that's a massive piece to ensuring that we have proper safeguards. And I think one of the things you mentioned earlier as well was, I think it was a response by Mr. Fregrescatos' question in relation to the threat present to Canada. And you mentioned it was high. What can we do in terms of our recommendations to ensure that we can reduce that? What would you say your biggest recommendation would be for Canada to ensure that we can actually try to control this threat? Because that's, I think, a scary thing to Canadians when they hear that.
I'm sorry, I missed the threat. Which was the threat that was high?
You said, I think the question was by Mr. Fregrescatos in terms of the risk present to Canada, and you mentioned that the threat to Canada was quite high in terms of cybersecurity for information.
Oh, we've seen a high level of threat activity against the government of Canada. So risk is different from activity. So what we've seen on an ongoing basis, and for the greater than a decade that I've been doing this job, is that there's a lot of threat activity against the government of Canada. We are an interesting target for a lot of countries and a lot of cyber criminals, and that has always been a very high level. So.
And what could we do to limit this risk?
I think that we're a prosperous country. We have things that other countries want. We have opportunities for cyber criminals. So I think that is a lot of the motivation. At the same point in time, we want to make ourselves a hard target and bake in the defenses that we have to make sure that cyber criminals don't make money off us and state-sponsored threat actors don't get the information they want. So continuing to up our defenses is probably the best way to do it.
And that means investment.
Yep, and as we have in the past as well with our cyber defense services. So.
And thank you very, very much. Two more members will be asking questions. Mr. McCauley, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Hayes, I want to go back to you. In 719, you mentioned you can't report some findings publicly because doing so would reveal vulnerabilities and pose a national security risk, which is fine. We reported them directly to the departments. Do you have assurances from the departments that these items will be addressed? And are these departments reporting back to you that these issues were being addressed?
Yes, the department responded to our recommendation to us, and we will be going back to follow up to make sure that they are addressed. That was one of the reasons we wanted it in the report, so that it was completely transparent and that you could ask us whether we have done our job.
Is there a timeline on when they're going to have committed to address this issue?
So it was based on the recommendation that we made. There was an importance to act immediately, and at this point in time, I don't think that there was a specific time frame in the response, but we will be looking at whether or not actions have been taken.
Are you able to explain the nature of the issue?
It was a monitoring and oversight kind of issue from the central agency perspective.
Okay. One of my colleagues in the House had an order paper question about data breaches, and I think it came back like 2,400 pages of data breaches suffered by the government. This was it was November 2021, so a couple year and a half ago. Could any of these data breaches be directly linked to perhaps some of the shortcomings that you've identified in our security?
I'm not in a position to say that. I mean, I guess what I would say in response is that the importance of preventing, detecting, and acting is one of the points of emphasis from our report. And part of being in a position to be able to do that is making sure that the controls that have been established are being put in place. So, and the monitoring and oversight is being done effectively. That is the posture that needs to be taken.
Okay. Ms. Luello, you mentioned about we need to spend more money to stop falling further behind. How much have you identified? Is it solely for TBS, or is this, you're speaking on behalf of Mr. Perron needs more money as well, or department-wide? And so how much money?
Yeah, in terms of a dollar value, from an overall government perspective, I think that the technology spend, the digital spend that we do is substantial. And the largest issue we have is around delivery against the work that we've committed to do. So I would suggest that it is less about spending more money on digital and more about being more focused and prioritized in which digital work needs to go and applying the right resources to it.
Did I hear wrong? I thought I heard that from yourself, we need to spend or invest more and spend more money to stop falling further behind.
We need to invest more consistently. So the funding models, the way that government funds, at least to my understanding, I'm by no means an expert, it's on an annual rolling basis or a programmatic view, and it is also done in a very decentralized way, and that is where I would say that we have challenges. But from a spend perspective, to just double click on what Rajiv said, we do need to continue to spend in the cybersecurity, and we do need to be able to spend on skills. All of that together is the spend envelope, but we do not have a forecast, if that's the question you're asking.
Okay, let me just ask, the main estimates just came out. Was there satisfactory money in there for what you need to do and what we need to do from your department?
So from a Cyber Center perspective, Budget 2022 did provide a significant amount of money to CSC.
Enough?
From a cloud perspective, a lot of the monitoring that we do is directly proportional to the transition or the migration of departments to the cloud. So as the departments migrate to the cloud, our needs will potentially grow, but currently we are able to monitor.
Okay. Just one last question, and I'm not sure, maybe it's Mr. Perron. the data centers, I've been at OGO for 7 years, and I remember Mr. Parker coming and describing the data centers. Explain it to me in simple terms. Are we migrating some of the work data over to the cloud? And if so, are there money savings that should be being experienced in the data centers, or is this apples and oranges?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Very complicated, but I think I will start the answer. When we close legacy data center and we bring these called workload into an enterprise data center, yes, there is savings because we, at scale, and the infrastructure in the enterprise data center give us better reliability, better security, but
moving it over to the cloud, is there?
Usually,
just one
to
second,
make
Mr.
it
Colley, just don't, you're past your time, so I'm going to let Mr. Perron speak, but if you interrupt, I'm going to cut the time. So, Mr. Perron, you have the floor for, I know you said it's a complicated answer, about 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so we try to avoid what we call lift and shift by taking workloads from legacy data center and just bringing it in the cloud. There is an element of modernization, and there is a business there. So I think, like my colleague explained a bit later, the analysis of each case depend on the effort that we will put in the modernization and how we are going to spread. So I think I can provide you more if you're interested. But we have in the last subsea a saving that was in public PSPC, that was funding is transferred back to SSC because we are consuming less space because we are closing legacy data centers. So there is saving with the consolidation, at least within the infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Mr. Sidhu, you have the last 5 minutes round. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to our witnesses for being with us here today. I know cybersecurity is something that our government is very seized with many different departments, many different ministers involved. And Mr. Gupta, you had mentioned that we need to continue to invest in cybersecurity. Recently in our recently announced Indo-Pacific strategy, the $2.3 billion strategy, cybersecurity is included in there. And I'm not sure if you're able to shed a little more light in terms of allies or friendlies that are doing a good job that we can learn from, best practices. Is there countries that we kind of look to when we talk about cybersecurity?
Well, I mean, certainly we work very closely with our Five Eyes Alliance, and we have a very good understanding as to what they're all doing. At the same point in time, as a cyber center, we work with like-minded allies around the world as well and try our best to learn from their best practices as well to make sure we're up to speed. And we'll be growing that into the Indo-Pacific as well to build further allies and relationships in that space.
Wonderful. And is there something that stands out to you, maybe that the U.S. or Australia or the U.K., one of these countries, is doing that you think we can kind of bring to Canada?
Obviously, we do a lot of information sharing and help each other out, so very important. I think from a government perspective, we're fairly well positioned in terms of how we built up our ecosystem, and we continue to learn in the critical infrastructure space as we go forward. It's a bit of a...
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Ms. Luello. How do I pronounce this right?
It's Lilo, but Luello en français.
Sorry, Ms. Lilo. So my question to you, you had mentioned that there's roughly 800 services under cloud management at this time. You said that's a very small fraction. How many programs are there that need to be brought in?
So at this point, part of the work we're going through is analyzing what that right number is going to be. I could say 50% will go to cloud and 50% will stay in data centers, but we have not defined that completely yet, but I think that's a reasonable proxy. And it, again, is not all systems are equal. And so, and there is flexibility in the cloud where we can stand things up and then roll it down when we don't need it any longer. That's a little bit different than in the traditional data center. So part of that is going to be informed by the financial modeling work that we're going to do, because we want to make sure that we're getting the best value for Canadians.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for that. And in terms of cost efficiencies, I know when we're looking at a server room, when the equipment ages, it's more maintenance, and I'm guessing that's one of the reasons why we're looking at cloud for longevity, for savings. Is that kind of the approaches?
Yeah, yes, very, very much so. It's us not needing to buy our own equipment and install it and keep it updated. That is the accountability of a cloud service provider, and it puts us on a path of ever-fresh modernization, which would be a very good path to be on.
Mr. Chair, how much time do I have?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? Okay, well, I'll give our witnesses here some time since this is the last round here. If there was something missed or you got cut off, is there something you want to highlight before we end today?
Maybe just, Mr. Chair, to continue on the last question. We have some use case that we are doing it. There is a pathfinder work here around cloud. There is things we never did that we are doing. We never take a risk with the quality, the security, the privacy. This is always attached. But there is, in terms of the business, we are experimenting to some extent. So it's why starting small is very important to learn and scale up. We are working with one of our clients with whom we have a cycle where there is peak time. We are building an infrastructure, and then after a while, we have to dismantle it because it's not needed anymore. We are working with them on what will look the business next time because we are going to rely more on the cloud and less on the traditional infrastructure, and we are doing the cost assessment on that. So in the future, we will be able to answer a bit more these kind of questions about how this will work. But really, from my perspective, is one of the benefits of cloud is the ability to go fast and the ability to scale up and scale down. And it's not the government of Canada obligation to decommission, deinstall all that equipment that have been run there for maybe a year, 2 years. We don't have to buy this. So what we are going to pay is for a service. And of course, it's a different model because we are going to not spend capital and we are going to spend operating on this. And there will be a blip in our spending, but we will not have to invest in the infrastructure and then deinstall the infrastructure. So there is a lot of business case where this will make sense, but we start at small scale, learn how it works, find the challenge we have to deal with, and adjust. And this is the model that paid out. And I'm really glad that one of the first Pathfinder was the CSE. This is where we learned a lot. And this team is highly preoccupied by the security. So it was right to start on the cloud journey with an organization that have so much attention on security because we needed to learn there. We need to feel secure to put anything else in the cloud. So starting with the right use case is very, very important.
And maybe just a last comment. I hope today this committee saw a little bit of the team play that's going on within government on this really important file. It does take a community to deliver digital in government. We are behind. We need to accelerate. We're going to learn from the things that the AG pointed out. Like we said, very supportive of that work. And we will continue to learn as we go along this path and just really hope that if there's nothing else you took away from today's session that was productive, you took away the fact that we are working on this as a collective community.
Thank you very, very much. And I just a couple of just brief questions. Mr. Gupta, and I'm not looking for a long explanation. Are data centers more secure than clouds generally? Again,
So we provide the controls to make sure they could be equivalently secure.
Okay.
But then at the same point in time, you have to look at staff and skill set and having the availability and perhaps some of the scale that cloud providers might have to apply to the problem. So that's it's more of an operational question.
Okay, so you're saying they can be made equivalent. Mr. Perron, I get the impression that you're partial to cloud because there are efficiencies. You can scale up, you can scale down. You pay for what you use. Is that a fair assessment?
It is a fair assessment. And it goes faster. If I'm asked to build together 25 server, I will take days, weeks to procure, install. This could be there tomorrow night if we use an hyperscaler.
And you believe that there are cost savings. Is that correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I thought...
Mr. Chair, there is not cost saving in all instances. There is cost saving if we are taking what Catherine described as a cloud smart approach. For some type of work, I could use the word workload. It's easier to describe rather than data and application. There is cost saving, but we need to do the detail analysis before we go there because it's difficult to just go in and go out. You cannot change your mind. If you build into a data center, if you want to amortize the investment, you need to be there for a while. If you go in cloud, we need to learn also to not stay locked in with a vendor and have that velocity. And I don't think... Catherine was really blunt with the committee before. I will on this one. And I said that to the hyperscaler. These companies have not given us the right price still. Organizing together as an enterprise, being able to procure with this consolidated demand from the government of Canada, we can get better price from them. So we are not at the end of
Right.
measuring savings
Okay.
because we haven't get necessarily the best price yet.
Thank you. My last question goes to Mr. Hayes. The report seemed to suggest to me that in fact that the budgeting has been not adequate. I'm going to give you the last remark on that, just to kind of flesh that a little bit, because you didn't get a lot of questions on that. But I'm curious to hear that, because it sounds like a big enterprise with so many different departments working together.
Thank you very much for that. That is an important point that I did want to emphasize if I got the chance. So what we really wanted to get at with the recommendation about the costing model, the funding framework, is really about allowing departments who are onboarding onto cloud to see not just the short-term costs, but the medium and long-term costs, because say a big department can absorb costs, additional costs down the road that might be there because of the need to increase skills or tools or oversight, but it's a lot harder for smaller departments. So what they have to do sometimes might be reallocate from other places, and that puts other programs or security at risk. So this is a big part of that cost-benefit analysis. If you don't know your short, medium, and long-term costs, then you don't really have the clear picture. So I think we're all on the same page with the importance of that, and this will be something that will help to identify which things should be moving to the cloud and which shouldn't.
Thank you very much. I'll now excuse all the witnesses. I appreciate you coming today. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.